operational information update on the current wildfire situation in BC. For today's briefing, we'll have updates from Todd Nessman, Manager of Fire Operations with BC Wildfire Service, Brendan Ralphs, Director of Response with Emergency Management BC, and Janelle Choyette, Staff Sergeant with the BC RCMP. A reminder to media on the line, you may now press *1 to enter the queue. You will be limited to one question and one follow-up today. With that, I will turn it over to Todd Nessman, Manager of Fire Operations with BC Wildfire Service. Todd, please go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. I'd like to provide a brief update on the provincial wildfire situation. Since April 1st, 2021, the BC Wildfire Service has responded to 1,516 fires, resulting in nearly 825,000 hectares burned. There are currently 263 active wildfires burning in British Columbia, 31 of which are wildfire of note. 182 of these are due to natural causes and 22 are human caused. The 10-year average for this time of year is 1,036 fires and 201,000 hectares burned. Significant winds over the weekend challenged our organization, and we had steady growth on a number of our fires of note in the southern interior. Fortunately, the rain we've received over the last 24 hours has calmed the fire behavior. This reprieve is welcome and allows our teams on the ground to make progress on their objectives. We're expecting more rain today. The impacts of this rain will be short-lived. Our fire fuels are wet, but deeper layers will remain dry, and the amount of rain we received is not enough to reverse the impacts of the very dry spring and the summer we've experienced. There are still some weeks ahead in this fire center, and I want to extend my thanks to everyone for their patience and support. In terms of resources, currently we have 3,830 personnel assisting the efforts. We have 210 aircraft, 172 helicopters are included, as well as 38 air tankers. We have 1,179 contractors working. And in terms of our structure protection assets, we have 532 personnel currently supporting, which includes 65 engines, 37 tenders, 61 structure protection units, and 45 structure protection units type 2. In terms of heavy equipment, we have 545 pieces currently supporting, which includes dozers, tenders, low beds, and skidders. And I'll pause at this point with the update.
Thank you, Todd. We'll now hear from Brendan Ralphs, Director of Response with Emergency Management BC. Go ahead, Brendan.
Good afternoon. As mentioned yesterday by Minister Farnworth, high winds and extreme fire danger led to rapid growth on many of the existing fires of note through the central interior over the weekend, forcing hundreds of people from their homes and putting thousands more on alert. Now, some of these areas have been receiving rainfall, as my colleague from the BC Wildfire Service just said, and that is welcome news. We should note that it's only a brief reprieve at the moment, and the wildfire danger throughout much of the province remains extremely serious. And so for that reason, once again, we're reminding people, please not to travel to areas impacted by wildfires, specifically those areas that are on evacuation order or alert. The Coquihalla Highway has been reopened today, but it's important that all travelers do their research before travel. For those who live in areas that are, for those who live in wildfire impacted areas, if you're not on order or alert, I want to be clear that we're not asking you to leave at this time. But if you're on alert or if you're put on alert, then we're asking you to be ready to go on very short notice. And if you're put on evacuation order, then we're asking you not to delay and to please leave for your safety and for the safety of first responders. From that, then I'm now going to provide a bit of a current update from EMBC with some of our own numbers. So in response to the current wildfire event in British Columbia, we have 10 First Nation Band Council resolutions, 35 states of local emergency, 86 evacuation orders that represent approximately 8,262 properties on order, and 125 evacuation alerts that represent approximately 22,729 properties on alert. As part of the emergency support services that are intended to support evacuees, there are 14 reception centers located in the following communities: Seabird Island First Nation near Agassiz, 100 Mile House, Castlegar, Chilliwack, Kamloops, Kelowna, Lillooet, Merritt, Oliver, Penticton, Prince George, Quesnel, Salmon Arm, Vernon, and Williams Lake. There are also 3 group lodging facilities located in the central region, in the overall Okanagan region, and 1 group lodging facility located in the southwest region. And we currently have over 100 evacuees using group lodging facilities in BC. I'd like to close with 3 key messages, once again, re-emphasizing these 3 key messages for British Columbians. I'd like to encourage people to please create a plan to stay with family or friends if you're evacuated. This is important because it will free up accommodation for those who have no other options if they're evacuated. I'd like to remind people that we're doing our very best to keep evacuees as close as possible to their home communities. And finally, once again, we're encouraging tourists to travel to areas that are not impacted by wildfire. Most of BC is smoke-free and not impacted by evacuation orders or alerts, and we're encouraging people to choose those areas to travel to. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. We'll now hand it over to Janelle Choyette, Staff Sergeant with the BC RCMP. Go ahead, Janelle.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks very much for having me. I just want to reassure you that the RCMP is continuing to monitor the fire activity, and we have redeployed resources from throughout the province to the Southeast District in order to support the evacuation efforts that are underway there, as well as continuing to identify additional resources that can surge into the area should the need arise. We're monitoring we have moved a number of our operations out of evacuated order areas, including Logan Lake. So in Logan Lake, operations have been moved to the Merritt area. While we are aware that there is an alert for that community of Merritt, we are making plans to move both the detachment operations elsewhere. That being said, it's very important to note that while we are evacuated from the area, that does not mean that our officers are not continuing to patrol evacuated areas. In fact, our officers are focused on that and continuing to monitor your properties to ensure that there are no concerns. And to date, we haven't received any reports of criminality with respect to communities that are under order. But if you do have concerns, we do encourage you to call your local RCMP detachment. So if you have been displaced and you have concerns based on something you're seeing on your camera or something like that, please call the detachment that you would normally police that area. So if you are from Logan Lake, you could call your Logan Lake RCMP. We are still accepting calls for the area. So certainly if you are concerned, we do encourage you to do that. Our Indigenous policing members are very engaged with the Indigenous community and are continuing to liaise with them. And we continue to go door to door in order to ensure that all impacted properties have evacuated or are aware of the evacuation orders that are in place, and that the risks that may be associated with evacuation. We're greatly benefited from the local search and rescue volunteers, as long with the fire departments, the local area fire departments, BC Conservation Service, in completing those notifications. And just on that note, yesterday, the Vernon North Okanagan RCMP, in partnership with the City of Armstrong, issued a news release yesterday, just reminding and asking residents, as part of your evacuation plan, if you could ensure that you post a note in a very visible location on your property, indicating that you have evacuated, the date that you did evacuate, where you're planning to be, and a contact number that you can be reached at. And what that does, that allows our officers or whomever is making that evacuation notification to that property, that they don't have to go looking for those people. They can just move on to the next property and ensure, knowing full well that your family and your the people inside that home are safe, and we can make our efforts elsewhere. As well, we are asking that if you are planning to evacuate, you are under alert, as my colleagues have noted previously, that you do have a plan, and that plan does include looking at Drive BC, because we do know that the fire activity, along with some rock slide activity, has caused road closures throughout a number of the areas in our province. So if you are planning a route that you do just prior to getting on the road, that you do check Drive BC, and to ensure that the road that you're planning on traveling on is not impacted by a road closure. As well, if your travel is bringing you through a local community, please respect the municipal speed boundaries and respect that some of these communities are seeing traffic and vehicular traffic that is well above the norms. So we ask that you respect the municipal speed limits and that you do your best to get through them efficiently, but also safely. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes the operational updates for today. A reminder to media on the line that you may now press *1 to enter the queue, and you will be limited to one question and one follow-up today. Our first question today comes from Richard Zussman with Global News. Richard, please go ahead.
I'm trying to get some clarity on the guidance for people not to travel. Is it specifically for people not to travel for recreational reasons to areas with orders and alerts, or is the area where you would like people to stay away larger than that in terms of places where evacuees are going, Kamloops, Kelowna, other areas where people are planning travel in the interior?
I think this is Brendan from Emergency Management BC, and I can address that. So once again, we're asking travelers to plan their travel carefully and to try to avoid areas impacted by wildfire, and specifically those that are impacted by wildfire orders and alerts, but the areas that are widely affected by wildfire in general. And to assist with that, we encourage people to plan ahead, and they can do that by looking at bcwildfire.ca, at Emergency Info BC, and Drive BC, as my colleague from the RCMP has already noted.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm not sure how many more specifics you could give me, but if someone is planning a trip to Kelowna or Kamloops that are currently not under order or alert, but are being used as places where evacuees are going, should someone from Vancouver Island or Metro Vancouver or Alberta be traveling to those areas right now?
So thank you once again for your question. And so again, we are overall, it's difficult to be drawn into specifics because the overall wildfire event has been so dynamic and wide ranging in the province this year. So once again, really encouraging people to avoid areas impacted by the wildfires, and that specifically those under order and alert, but impacted by wildfires in general. And that can include those seeking accommodation. And so once again, it's difficult for me to comment on specific areas of the province, but I'll point people back to those three resources, bcwildfire.ca, Emergency Info BC, and Drive BC, to help them make their decision and ensure that areas that are impacted by wildfire remain clear so that we can best serve evacuees and those impacted by the event.
Our next question comes from Lisa Cordesco with the Vancouver Sun. Lisa, please go ahead.
On that travel issue, is there any thoughts being given, like in Alberta, through the kind of counterpart that they might have there to Drive BC or other things, just to give them a heads up about what's going on in BC?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat the first part of your question? I heard the second half, but I think I may have just missed the first part.
It's just in terms of travel alerts, is there any thought being given to a more wide-ranging travel alert, like into other provinces, like Alberta?
Oh, thank you. Well, we've certainly done our best to try to publicize our recommendations regarding travel through media, both through television, radio, and our online media sources as best as possible. I can't comment specifically on efforts that have been made within Alberta, but I can certainly confer with our team and see if I can get back to you about that.
Lisa, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. As I understand, Highway 1 is still closed because of a mudslide, and I'm wondering if that mudslide has any connection to the wildfires.
So I can certainly start off there and say that my understanding is that Highway 1 is still closed due to landslide, but once again, because these situations are dynamic, really encourage people to use that Drive BC resource to make sure that they have the latest information. And I don't have the information today to comment on the cause of the landslide.
Our next question is from Brenna Owens with CP. Brenna, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if perhaps Todd could give a little bit more of an insight into what we can expect for the rest of the week with the weather forecast. He mentioned that the fuel, despite the rain, is still pretty dry and lower layers. So just curious what you're expecting in terms of fire behavior and suppression efforts this week.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, actually, we've got a very favorable week ahead of us, to be honest with you here. We've really had some good precipitation in some of the key areas that we needed it. Upwards 25 to 40 millimeters of rain hit some of the areas that are pretty crucial, and they've been in a prolonged drought situation. So it doesn't solve the problem, but it helps. And this week we're going to see a sort of variable weather come through. That being said, we will start to see drying, even with all this rain that's gone on. We will start to see drying occur come tomorrow, Thursday. We won't be back into the same conditions that we've experienced, into the high 30s or anything like that in the southern part of British Columbia, which is good for our staff and gives us an opportunity to start to get a handle on some of the challenging incidents and complexes that we're dealing with. So it is a favorable week. The outlook 6 to 10 days at this point is looking like we're going to have a series of lows coming through the province, which will really assist us in achieving some of the objectives we're trying to with some of these larger incidents.
Brenda, do you have a follow-up?
Sure. I guess, given we're already at August 17th, I'm just wondering, I know that some crew members might be going back to school, even like university, for example, in September. Are you kind of worried about this season extending further into September than usual, even despite the fact that it started weeks earlier than usual?
No, thanks for the question. Yes, we've begun, contingency planning around the student drop-off that we see, and traditionally we see this every fall. Come late August, a number of our personnel will start going back to school. We will be exploring, continued support from our industry partners, as well as our contractor community and our CIFC and resource partners. So we'll be exploring that. It is something that we're aware of, and we have started planning on the drop-off. We're also hoping that, or we're expecting come fall, things will begin to dissipate somewhat in terms of activity, and the natural effects of fall will begin to take place, which is going to help things. It's just we need to get to that point and continue the efforts for them.
Our next question is from Marcella Bernardo with News 1130. Marcella, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone, and thanks again for taking the time to do this. My main question is, if anyone, I'm not sure if Emergency Management BC's Brendan Ralph can answer this, but at any point have you had to kick any tourists out of hotels to make room for evacuees? And the reason I'm asking this is because I spoke with one hotel operator in Kamloops who told me that they're constantly being asked if they have room, and they don't feel comfortable telling people who've already booked rooms that they have to leave in order to make room for evacuees.
So accommodations have just definitely been a challenge through this severe wildfire season. We've had extreme fire activity and thousands of people evacuated from their homes to other communities. To that extent, that's part of the reason why we're asking everyone to consider their travel beforehand and to avoid those fire-impacted communities, and particularly those on evacuation order and alert. And I know that local governments, emergency support services, and provincial staff have been working hard to secure accommodation and support for everyone throughout this wildfire event.
Marcella, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, just following up on that particular question, what advice would you give to people who are now trying to cancel bookings and are being told that they can't, even though there's a state of emergency and there's other things going on that, they're being told don't come to fire zones, but then they're also being told you'll lose your deposit if you don't?
Right. Thank you for your question. So at this point, we're still very much in the middle of this dynamic wildfire season, and the conditions remain extreme. And so here at Emergency Management BC, we're largely focused on the emergency response effort, working with our emergency management partners and supporting communities and evacuees in their efforts. I can appreciate the issues for travelers who are faced with the situation that you're describing. I'm afraid I just don't have the information today to be able to answer that specific question.
We have time for one more question today, and that is from Rob Monroe with Info News. Rob, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for this. The Central Okanagan Emergency Center sent a note out saying that they have enough accommodation here and they're not taking any more, but I'm wondering how that situation is in other areas like Kamloops. and particularly with the possibility of Merritt having to evacuate, where are those people going to go?
So as I said, I recognize this, that supplying accommodation for evacuees has been an extremely challenging part of this event. Certainly one of the reasons why we're encouraging anyone who could be forced to evacuate due to wildfire to please plan ahead and try to plan to stay with family or friends so that we can reduce that overall burden on accommodation across the province. Accommodation does tend to be dynamic in terms of its availability, as does the wildfire situation evacuees. And so while we certainly are making every effort to keep evacuees as close to their home communities as possible, in some cases, people are being asked to evacuate to other communities. As far as Merritt, I can't comment specifically on what that plan would be because the situation is dynamic and can be affected by road closures as well. But once again, we make every attempt to keep people as close as possible to their home communities, but also encourage people to consider to have a plan that sees them stay with friends and family and removes that burden for others who don't have that option.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just in terms of the Kalini Beach and Ewing's Landing, there were a number of people who refused to leave, and they had to be rescued, and fire efforts were restricted because of that. Do we have any idea of how severely the firefighting efforts were impacted and whether there's going to be any repercussions for those kinds of behaviors going forward or for these particular people?
For me, so for Emergency Management BC, I would simply have our general message that when people are put on evacuation order, we strongly encourage them to leave the area immediately, and want to emphasize that choosing to stay behind not only puts them at risk, but also emergency responders. As far as direct impacts to fire suppression activities, that's something that I don't have the information to comment on.
Maybe I can jump in there if I could, Brendan. In that particular case, yeah, it did take away from the efforts that were at hand, and having to have individuals go and tend to folks who stayed in an evacuation area, it is problematic, and it's not the first time we've had it happen this summer. It presents a challenge for our staff because it puts them in danger, and we've talked about this at length previously. So we would encourage people to heed the advice and to leave the area. Because it does present, as Brendan say, it is a dynamic situation when we're dealing with fire, and to have that happen, and especially in the event of a situation like White Rock Lake where it was a dire situation, to have people in that position, it is in nobody's best interest to see that, and so we please heed the advice and leave the area.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's information update. Our next scheduled update is set for Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. Thank you.